There are many races that look human: humans, elves, dwarves, and there are demons who, despite being few in number, are much stronger than the human-like beings. These two powers have been in conflict for thousands of years, which led to the continent of Leanders being divided into East and West. But when a moderate demon king ascended the throne 300 years ago, this conflict began to calm down, and the human races lived in a temporary peace. However, in the 5th month of the year 2826, this peace was shattered with the succession of a new demon king, who launched a fierce attack on the human races. That attack later became known as the Great Invasion, during which several human countries fell. By the 4th month of the following year, the Gargan Empire, the largest military human force, was destroyed. The humans resisted by gathering their remaining forces and mounting a counterattack against the demons. There was a suicide squad that managed to sneak into the demons' castle to assassinate their king. We see a human warrior attacking the demon king as the others prepare to fight. There was an epic battle between them, and then we see dead monsters everywhere. Then, we switch to the suicide squad roaming the demon king's castle. A knight checks on his friend Theron to see if he's okay, noticing blood dripping from him. Theron looks angrily at a demoness warrior, who smiles at him, ready to fight, and behind her is a human captive. Theron tells his friends to leave, and that he'll handle the demoness. His two friends leave. Theron slowly approaches the demoness, sword in hand. We then see his two friends standing in front of a giant gate. The knight pulls out a small bottle and drinks from it. Suddenly, his eyes turn red. The knight and his female companion enter through the gate and see a red jewel before them. The knight walks toward it. His companion warns him about red orbs attacking him. The knight tries to dodge them with his sword, but one orb strikes his leg. Another red orb was about to finish him, but his companion tried to deal with it using her magical staff. The orb exploded, killing her before his eyes. At this moment, a creature with wings appears before him, launching more red orbs. The knight readies himself to face this creature with his sword. He attacks, dodges the orbs, and strikes with his sword, but the creature transforms its arm into a sword, and they trade blows. But the creature fires another volley of red orbs. The knight tries to dodge, but fails. The knight asks the creature what this attack is, and the creature explains it's a high-level elimination spell that destroys everything. The knight decides to use the magical power of the gemstone in facing the creature and its spell. He uses the gemstone's power in his sword and attacks. The creature tries to block, but finally, the knight manages to pierce through the creature's body with his sword. The creature's body bursts apart before him. The knight collapses, dropping his sword, saying, "It's finally over." Silence falls over the area as the knight realizes he's the sole survivor. He closes his eyes, recalling his family and friends whom he lost, and falls to the ground. Suddenly, he hears a voice from the red jewel, which glows intensely. The knight tries to get up to reach the jewel, so its magical power doesn't spiral out of control. Wounded, he climbs to it, reaches out, and finally grabs it. As he does, a magic circle appears around him, and he starts to feel pain. We then see a butterfly land on a flower, but it suddenly vanishes, and the scene shifts to the knight waking up in bed. He looks around, seeing he's in a house, and wonders if this is his room. He gets up and goes to the window overlooking the city buildings, admiring its beauty, but he quickly remembers the scene of the city in flames and tears up, thinking he's dreaming. At that moment, a girl enters to wake him up and says, "Wake up, Kyle," but she notices he's already awake. Kyle looks at her and says, "Lizzie." Lizzie comes closer and asks if his stomach hurts. Kyle looks at her and hugs her, convinced it's a dream. Lizzie blushes and tries to pull away, but he doesn't let go, so she tries to shove him, and they both fall onto the bed. Lizzie, annoyed, headbutts him in the stomach, and Kyle falls back in pain. Lizzie yells at him, saying she's not emotionally ready right now, storms out angrily. Kyle aches in pain and tells himself, "I feel pain, so this isn't a dream." He pulls back the bedsheet and finds the red jewel, grabbing it, now certain this isn't a dream. Kyle looks in the mirror and notices he's younger and has no wounds on his body. He wonders what's happening to him. He goes to the window and sees the city has returned to its former appearance, and Lizzie is alive again, and he's become younger. He figures he must have gone back in time. He takes the red jewel out of his pocket and believes it's the reason for what happened to him. At that moment, he feels hungry and goes to the dining room, where he sees lots of food on the table. He thinks Lizzie must have cooked all this for him, as she used to come to their house to cook for him and his mother, since neither of them could cook. Kyle smiles, sits down, and begins eating. Tears fill his eyes because he hasn't tasted food like this in a long time, and he keeps eating. It turns out Kyle finished all the food on the table. At that moment, someone appears behind him. Surprised Kyle ate it all by himself, and looks for more food in the pots. Kyle looks at him and says, "Theron?" He remembers just fighting with him moments ago. Theron looks at him and asks, "What are you looking at?" Kyle regains his composure and asks what day it is. Kyle is shocked when Theron replies that it's the 24th day of the 5th month, year 2823. Kyle yells, asking if he's sure. Theron confirms, saying today is Kyle's birthday, and that the meal he just ate was his birthday gift. Kyle says it's a cheap present. Theron complains he's hungry, and suggests that if Kyle begs Lizzie, she'll make him another delicious meal. Theron leaves, and Kyle mumbles that Theron will do anything to fulfill his goals. Kyle wonders what he should do and whether he really has gone back in time because of magical power. Next, we see Kyle heading to the building next to his house. It's a library. Kyle sees a girl reading a book and is surprised, remembering she had died. The girl looks at Kyle and says it's rare for him to come here, revealing she's his mother. She stayed up all night reading and lost track of time. Kyle asks his mother a question about magic. She doesn't know if she has an answer, but Kyle reminds her she's one of the city's greatest sorceresses, and she smiles. Kyle asks if there's a magic spell to go back in time. She says yes, explaining there are spells that affect time, but no one knows where they are or how to use them, because it all depends on magical power. She adds that even if the greatest magician in history used all their power, she doubts they could travel back in time, even for 1 second. Kyle asks if it's possible with a magical artifact. She's surprised, saying that's an excellent idea. A magical artifact could be used as a catalyst to store magical energy, but to store that much energy would take 1,000 years. Kyle asks about using forbidden rituals. His mother responds, a sacrificial ritual that turns life force into magical force. She asks him where he learned that. Kyle nervously says he read it in a book. She understands and tells him it's impossible, even with a forbidden ritual, since that would require the souls of half the beings on the continent. Kyle remembers the battle and thinks to himself that someone could have sacrificed half the continent's population. His mother adds that there's no catalyst capable of holding enough energy for time travel, but then she finds a book, opens it, and says she found it. She shows him a picture in the book. The legendary Holy Dragon Heart is the only option. Kyle looks at the picture and realizes it's the same red jewel he has. We learn that the old magical kingdom, Exarlis, thrived for 1,000 years thanks to the Holy Dragon Heart, but its energy was depleted, leading to the kingdom's fall. Kyle's mother says the Dragon Heart alone can store enough magical power to travel back in time, but it's been lost for 1,000 years, and she suspects the demons found it. Now Kyle understands everything. His mother is happy they've finally had this kind of talk after so long, since Kyle had been avoiding her, but he explains he didn't mean to and apologizes. She tells him he's grown up a lot today, like he came back from the future. Kyle is surprised, but she tells him she's only kidding. Then she says she's hungry, and tells Kyle Lizzie cooked for them again. Kyle admits he ate it all by himself. She's shocked. He says he couldn't help himself. She asks if today is his birthday. Kyle says she's forgotten again, as usual. She laughs and replies that he can consider today's meal his birthday gift. Kyle wonders gloomily why everyone is so stingy with gifts for him. Afterwards, we see Kyle sitting alone outside, looking at the Holy Dragon Heart. He says, back to the past, and wonders what the heart wanted to make him do. Lizzie surprises him from behind. Suddenly, Kyle apologizes to Lizzie for what he did that morning. Lizzie says, at least you feel bad about it. Kyle explains he acted that way because of a weird, disturbing dream, and apologizes again. Lizzie asks about his nightmare. Kyle goes quiet. She asks if he dreamt about her dying. Kyle looks at her and says, something like that. Lizzie understands why he was so upset that morning, smiles, sits in front of him, and says she forgives him. She reminds him again that today is his birthday and wishes him a happy birthday. Kyle looks at her and remembers his village is close to the demon's territory and was the first place attacked in the Great Invasion. They burned it to the ground, turning it into hell, and he lost Lizzie. That day, he vowed to avenge her. Lizzie is calling his name and snaps him out of his thoughts, asking what's wrong and telling him he's hiding something. Kyle reassures her. Lizzie sits next to him. Kyle thinks to himself that in 3 years, this peace will end, and he's the only one who knows. If he does nothing, he'll watch his village burn again and lose those he loves. He shouts loudly, I will change my fate! He stands up and repeats, I will change my fate and the fate of this world. I swear it, no matter what it takes. Lizzie looks at him in astonishment. Finally, we see Kyle recording the future events he remembers in a notebook, wondering what he should do. The demons will attack again in 3 years, and if he asks people to prepare, nobody will believe him. He decides he'll kill the Demon King himself, but then reconsiders, knowing he can't do that alone with his current power. He gets up, walks over to his sword, and picks it up. We see Kyle training with his sword, recalling the demonic creature he defeated in the future before him. The creature throws red orbs at Kyle, and he dodges them with his sword, but a big red orb hits him in the face. Kyle mentions that there are 3 years left until the Great Invasion, and that he hasn't trained seriously in sword fighting or magic before. He casts magical spells and notices that his magical power has increased. He then attacks the creature, but a magical red orb hits him and knocks him to the ground. Kyle realizes he has great magical power, but his body can't keep up with it. Meanwhile, Theron and Lizzie are watching him and wondering what's wrong. Lizzie says that he seems strange. Theron says Kyle gave up after 15 continuous staring challenges over 3 days. and that Theron, of course, won. Suddenly, a woman appears behind them asking what they are planning, and Lizzie welcomes her. It turns out to be Layla-san, Theron's mother. She asks Lizzie if her son Theron supports himself. Lizzie tells her that he comes begging for food, which annoys Theron. Layla-san looks at Kyle, wanting to know what kind of monster he's fighting, and that he acts like a different person. Lizzie explains that Kyle had dead fish eyes yesterday. Theron says Kyle's dream is to inherit his legacy. Layla-san says that a child like Kyle changed suddenly because of a woman. Lizzie is surprised, but Layla-san notices Lizzie's reaction and says maybe she's wrong. Kyle feels a burning sensation in his back and thinks it's because of his magical power. Lizzie approaches him and asks who the woman is. Kyle doesn't understand the question. Lizzie grabs him roughly to make him confess. He doesn't understand her behavior. She shakes him hard, and Kyle vomits. Afterwards, Lizzie offers Kyle food and apologizes for her behavior, but he's upset. Theron, sitting next to Kyle, enjoys the food. Kyle looks at Layla-san and expresses his happiness at her return, as well as his mother's. Kyle asks permission to ask everyone a question. Layla-san is surprised by his manner. Kyle asks who has the full authority to control and convince several countries. Theron is surprised by the question. Layla-san's mother answers that the highest priest on the motherland, Karis, has influence. Layla-san says Randolph the hero, the one who defeated the Demon King 300 years ago. Theron explains that elves, dwarves, and humans listen to him. Kyle understands that kings, heroes, and priests are the ones people listen to, so he must become a hero within 2 years. He stands up. Layla-san looks at him and is sure something has happened to him. Lizzie doesn't see a problem. Kyle is now thinking about the future, and they need to keep an eye on him. Theron agrees. Kyle wonders why his back burns now. At night, Kyle is on his bed surrounded by books. He realizes he has the advantage of knowing the future. Theron enters, surprised. Kyle tells him he never felt grateful that his mother is obsessed with books. Theron sits next to him and asks if he's sure he wants to become a hero. Kyle says yes. Theron points out that it's not an easy thing to do. Kyle gets it and asks if Theron has any ideas for him. Theron asks what about defeating the Demon King. Kyle says if he could do that, he wouldn't be stuck like this. Theron agrees. Kyle asks what a hero needs. Theron says strength. Kyle replies that strength alone is useless and adds that he thinks he needs money. Theron says that's a strange way to put it. Kyle says heroes don't accept rewards for saving others, but traveling and adventures require money. Theron understands that this means funding. Kyle adds that a hero needs connections with famous and influential people because that boosts your fame. Theron starts to worry. Kyle continues that with money and connections, you can do most things, but that's not enough. Theron asks what else is needed. Kyle says a hero needs luck, but not just any luck. They have to be in the right place when disasters happen to step in and become a hero. Theron looks at him and says, "You mean?" Kyle cuts him off, saying he doesn't mean causing disasters just to solve them, but is ready to use any means, even deceitful ones. Theron says that's not what a future hero would say, and asks why Kyle wants to become a hero. Kyle asks if he's curious. Theron looks at him and says he doesn't think Kyle's real goal is to become a hero, but that he wants to achieve something else. Kyle smiles and says he has his reasons and Theron must trust him. Theron stands up, wishes him good luck, and leaves the room. Kyle tells himself Theron will help him, opens his notebook, and says he'll use this for funding. He wants to meet her again soon, and as for fame, if he can do something about the Arkin incident, but time will be tight then. The next morning, we hear Layla-san telling Kyle he's going on a journey. She asks if he told Soraya. Kyle smiles and says she cried a lot. Layla-san says she's overprotective. She adds that it's good to explore the world, and asks him to take Theron with him. Theron is surprised. Kyle says he was going to do that anyway, and is glad he got her permission. Layla-san says Theron is a strong shield. Kyle promises not to waste Theron's abilities. Theron gets angry because he feels he has no say. Later, Lizzie asks Kyle if he's going on a trip. He says yes, in 2 days. She asks where. Kyle says he'll go to the royal capital, Malad, to buy what he needs there and then start the real work. Lizzie looks at him and asks him to listen to her, but Kyle interrupts, saying he won't take her with him. Lizzie gets angry, telling him she trains with the prophecy warriors and won't be a burden. Kyle looks at her and tells her that her mother doesn't want her in danger. Lizzie says she'll apologize to her mother at her grave. Kyle insists he wants her to stay safe. He promises she'll be the first person he visits when he returns and asks her to wait for him. Lizzie looks at him and says she has nothing else to say. Kyle smiles and calls it the bravery bond that comes with growing older. Lizzie asks what he means since they're only 16, then asks him to promise to come back safely. Kyle promises. After that, we see Kyle apologizing to Lizzie for asking her to accompany him to the market, but Lizzie doesn't mind. Suddenly, Lizzie sees an elf creature and says she's beautiful. Kyle is surprised and leaves Lizzie and goes to the elf creature. Suddenly, we see that Kyle remembers her from his future, them sitting together, and she asks him to call her by her real name, which is, Kyle speaks here and says, Exis. The creature is surprised and angry and asks him what he said. Kyle is surprised because this is supposed to be their first meeting, and that it's a secret name for her that shouldn't be revealed. Exis asks her, "Who are you?" do, and grabs her swords. But Kyle catches up to her and asks her to slow down. Exis asks him to let go of her hands. Kyle realizes that this will cause a commotion, but he can't help it, and suddenly we hear Kyle ordering Exis to sleep, and she actually falls asleep. Kyle explains that Exis had said before that she had visited Ramarzi before, but he didn't expect to run into her. Suddenly, he remembers Lizzie, who is standing behind him, fuming with anger, who says to Kyle that she knows the creature is beautiful, but she didn't expect him to approach her so quickly. Kyle looks at her nervously and promises to explain it to her, in that he was feeling lonely without her. But Lizzie interrupts him and says to him, "What are you saying? I'm here," and gets angry and insists that she will go with him on his trip no matter what. And in the house, we see everyone at the table, and Kyle says that he's pleased to meet her, and asks her, "So, your name is Urza San Alice as well?" Exis stands up angrily and says to him that only she and her father know that name, and asks him how he knew it. Kyle hesitates because he can't tell her now because the event is 4 years away, and that they will fall in love with each other and she will tell him the name herself. Exis explains that she must kill him so that he doesn't reveal the secret of this name. Lizzie looks at her and says, "Hold on." Kyle says that he will tell her in the end. Exis gets angry and asks him if he realizes how important an elf's real name is. Kyle replies yes, and that he won't let her kill him, and suggests to her, until he can tell her why doesn't she apply the contract and prevent him from using her name for evil. Exis is surprised that Kyle knows about applying the contract. Kyle explains that contracts are usually concluded with souls, but in the name of kings, and whoever controls the elements can grant their real names to bind humans, and continues that the condition of the contract is not to tell anyone her name and not to use it for evil, and asks her what she thinks. Exis asks him, does he know what will happen if the contract is violated? Kyle replies, yes, I will die. Lizzie is shocked here. Exis backs down and says that his life is also at stake, and continues, let's do it if he's serious. But Exis can't perform the contract now because the moon isn't full, and the full moon will be in several weeks, so they have to wait until then. Kyle apologizes because he will be leaving tomorrow. Exis is surprised. After that, we see Kyle's mother crying because Kyle is getting ready to leave, and Lizzie reassures her and that she doesn't worry because she will be with him. Kyle asks her, are you really coming with me? Lizzie replies, of course, it's settled. Kyle's father wishes him good luck and advises him to take care of his friends. Kyle stands without responding, so Lizzie alerts him that his father is talking to him. Kyle understands this and asks his father and mother to take care of themselves, and his mother cries, and Kyle leaves with Theron and Exis, and Lizzie follows them. While they are walking, Theron expresses that he is happy that a beautiful creature like Exis has joined them on the trip. Exis clarifies to him that she is not with them and that she is only with them to monitor Kyle. Lizzie asks Kyle, isn't the direction of the capital the other side? Kyle smiles and says, let's leave that for later, and continues, since Urza, the controller of the elements, is with us. She replies to him and says that she is not from their group. Theron and Lizzie applaud. Kyle continues that they will go to the Sangard Mountains first, and asks them about the Sangard legend. Lizzie replies and asks, isn't it the legend that revolves around the magical kingdom of Axarls? Theron also says, which revolves around the maze of the magical princess. That place is just a legend. Kyle approaches them and explains that he actually has a map of the place, and the treasure chamber appears on it. Lizzie looks at him in despair, and Theron says that Kyle was deceived by a fake map, but Kyle insists that it is real. Lizzie regrets that he wants to believe that. Theron explains that people who are interested in money end up unhappy. Kyle understands that they won't be able to believe him at the moment, but Exis suddenly says that the map is made of a magical tree that is over 1,000 years old, and this technique has been lost since a long time, and it is no longer possible to make it, and that she believes that the map is original. Theron suddenly believes in Exis's words because beautiful women's words are trustworthy. Lizzie looks at the map and says that it is a vast place, and continues, how long will it take us to reach the treasure? Kyle reassures her that he has a plan. Lizzie and Theron wonder about the plan. Kyle says, we will dig, and we see Kyle and Theron digging, and Theron asks why they are digging a tunnel. Kyle explains to him that they are making a shortcut to the treasure because the maze is large and full of traps. Theron is shocked by Kyle's words, and Kyle continues that there are also magical puzzles and weapons. Theron asks Kyle angrily, was all of this explained on the map? Kyle hesitates because he knows all of this because of the troubles he faced before, but says to Theron that the maze is legendary and they must take precautions. And Kyle continues that when he said that he wanted to become a hero, he didn't know that the first thing he would do would be to dig a tunnel. We hear Exis say, why are we using a goblin spirit to do this? Kyle explains to her that this saves them from buying magical equipment. Exis asks Theron to stop digging because she hasn't finished reinforcing the walls. Theron asks her, and what is this? And tells Kyle to use detect magic. to make sure of the direction of the treasure chamber. Theron asks Kyle why Urza seems more interested now. Kyle tells him that she is a serious girl. Urza orders them to stop talking, and at night, the friends eat food, and Kyle says that it is very delicious, and also Urza, who feels that the food is refreshing after the effort she used in spirit magic. Lizzie asks them to eat, and asks Urza, "Did you catch this bear?" Lizzie replies, "Yes." Urza asks her, "Did you catch it with a trap?" Lizzie answers that she caught it with her hands. Urza is surprised, and after some time, we see Kyle looking at the map and saying, "We're almost there." And Urza comes to him and asks him about Theron, who hasn't returned yet. Kyle explains to her that Theron said that he would take a break, so Urza asks him, why does he want to become a hero, and looks at his rings and asks him, "Are they part of your training?" Kyle replies to her that each of the 2 rings doubles the weight of his body 2 or 3 times, and he is digging, and says that at the moment he is improving his physical fitness. So she asked him why he is bearing all this trouble, and does it have anything to do with knowing her real name? Kyle didn't answer, but at that moment he shouted and said, "We've arrived," and asked her to summon Lizzie and Theron, and we see Kyle hitting the wall, and it falls, and we see the treasure in front of them, which they are looking at in astonishment, and Theron runs to the gold madly. Kyle demands that they keep their focus, and reminds them that they only need the money to achieve their goal. Urza agrees with him, and Lizzie as well, and asks them to look at Theron, who has been driven mad by the money. At this time, Kyle says that it is his chance, and Kyle leaves them and goes to the chamber where the sword is, and suddenly a girl appears in front of him and says that she is impressed that a human has reached here. The girl explains to Kyle that he overcame many obstacles to stand before her. As she was speaking, Kyle interrupts her and tells her his friends will hear her. The girl gets angry and says, "How dare you? Do you know?" Kyle cuts her off and asks her to calm down. He explains that he knows who she is, a replica of Seldonia, the queen of magic who ruled the ancient magic kingdom. The girl is surprised and asks him how he knows her. Kyle replies that he'll explain later. He adds that he bypassed her traps and riddles to get there, and that he dug a shortcut. Seldonia retorts, "How dare you do that to my grave?" Kyle moves and asks her to start the final test, and that he's taking the sword. Seldonia is surprised again and asks him, "Who are you?" Kyle answers, "You'll know soon," and smiles. The girl transforms into a green light and enters the sword. Kyle pulls out the sword. He remembers his friends and what happened to him before. Seldonia reappears before him and asks him, "Is this true?" Kyle understands that she read his thoughts. He explains that he has the Holy Dragon Heart. Seldonia is surprised because she knows that magic across time exists. At that moment, his friends arrive looking for him. Kyle gets annoyed because they don't know anything. He asks Seldonia to play along. She asks him how. Lizzie asks him what he's doing here. Kyle acts surprised that he found a legendary sword. His friends say, "What?" Then we see Seldonia eating Lizzie's meals. She explains that these meals are very delicious. Lizzie tells her that she prepared them for their journey, and asks her, "Are you really the Queen of Magic?" Seldonia explains that she is a part of her, and that she is a magical living being created to assess their worthiness for her treasure. Theron asks her how she can eat the meals. She replies that she converts them into magical energy to sustain herself. Lizzie asks her why she looks like a child. Seldonia explains that she froze her growth at the age when her magical power peaked. She adds that if they weren't worthy of her treasure, she would have activated the final trap and destroyed the maze. But she is satisfied with Kyle, and that he can use this sword. Kyle thanks her. Seldonia asks him to take the summoned bag because it's linked to the treasure chamber and is suitable for extracting the treasure. Theron interrupts her by asking if he can also use a sword, and if he can use it instead of Kyle. Seldonia is surprised, and refuses. Lizzie apologizes for Theron. Urza explains that tastes haven't changed in 1,000 years. After that, in the street, we see Seldonia enjoying eating meals with them. Kyle asks her that she can eat later. Seldonia smells delicious food coming from a stall and goes to it, but Theron grabs her and assures her that she resembles country children visiting the city for the first time in their lives. At this time, Lizzie asks Kyle where they are going. Kyle replies that they got the treasure and it's time to prepare for battles, and that they need high-quality gear. They go to a shop. The seller asks them what they want. Kyle asks to buy some equipment. The seller apologizes and asks him if someone referred him here. Kyle remembers that new customers have to pay a deposit before entering the shop. The seller apologizes to him and asks for 10,000 gadol as a deposit. Kyle asks him if 4 gold Exarls pieces are enough. The seller is surprised and thanks them for dealing with him. Then he shows them what's inside the shop. Then we see a man named Vespas, and he is the shop owner. Seldonia asks him, "Are these clothes made by Milanus?" Vespas is surprised and asks her how she knew, because he was exceptional in the ancient ancient magic kingdom. Seldonia explains that he wasn't that great, because he would cry whenever she pointed out flaws in his work. Vespas is surprised. Meanwhile, Kyle appears and puts his hand over Seldonia's mouth and apologizes to Vespas for a small child's words. Vespas accepts his apology. Then we see Seldonia sitting and eating another meal. We hear Vespas saying that Kyle is looking at dragonhide armor that has physical and magical protection, and that they made it resistant to heat, cold, and poison. Kyle asks to buy it. Vespas is happy. Theron appears and refuses to wear the same clothes. Kyle looks at Lizzie and Orza and asks them to buy what they need from here. Lizzie agrees, and Orza wonders what she should buy. Kyle puts on the outfit and notices that it's easier to move than he expected. Lizzie likes the gloves, and Orza wears a soul stone amulet, and it's the first time she's worn an amulet like it. Theron asks a girl in the shop if they have an attractive sword. The girl goes to get it, and we see Seldonia still eating. Meanwhile, Kyle asks the shop owner to show him the magic stones. Vespas asks Kyle for his opinion on an attack stone containing explosion magic. Kyle asks him about a stone that helps against crawling monsters. Vespas brings him another stone. Kyle explains that this is a blizzard stone. Vespas replies yes and adds that it's difficult to add cold spells to stones because they are expensive. Kyle replies that he will take them all from him. Vespas is surprised and asks Kyle if he will take all the stones. Kyle adds that if he also has healing potions, he will take them all too. Vespas is surprised and asks him, "You'll take them all?" Kyle explains that he will pay the price with jewels, and that they are worth 10 million Gadol. Vespas is shocked and can't believe himself. Then we see Vespas and the sellers waving goodbye to Kyle and his friends as they leave. Theron explains that it was a huge shopping spree and hopes that no malicious rumors spread. Kyle turns around and assures him that they will leave tomorrow. Theron is surprised and explains that there's no time to waste, and Lizzie also explains that she will look around, because she rarely visits the royal capital, and Orza asks to accompany her because she has visited the capital before. Lizzie thanks her, and they say goodbye to Kyle. Kyle is happy that they are getting closer. Suddenly, Seldonia appears and also asks to go, hinting that there must be a restaurant with delicious food. Kyle stops her because he wants to talk to her about something, and Seldonia agrees. Kyle talks to Seldonia about wanting to check something, and asks her, "Can the future really be changed?" Seldonia replies that it's a strange thing to say, and adds that the future is not set in stone to begin with. Kyle asks her to explain. Seldonia replies that when she went back in time, she also went to another world at the same time. And this is her theory. There isn't just one timeline, but time branches into several timelines like tree branches, and Kyle's soul jumped from one branch to another. The proof of this is the Holy Dragon Heart, which he used as a catalyst. It also transported with him. Kyle understands from this that if this is a new world, it's not necessary to follow the same history. Seldonia replies, "Not identically, but the important details won't change." And she assures him that the great invasion will happen. Kyle understands her words, and Seldonia assumes that they can write history themselves with their actions, but this will be difficult. Kyle assures her that this was enough for him, and asks her if there are 2 holy dragon hearts in this world, right? But there is only 1 copy of it. Seldonia also has a theory for this, that the highest magic on the list of forbidden magic is the fusion spell. Kyle is surprised, and asks her what it is, because he hasn't heard of it before. Seldonia explains that it's a spell to increase magical power by fusing souls. Kyle repeats her words in surprise. Seldonia continues that your magical power is determined at birth according to your spiritual composition, and she adds that in ancient exiles they research strengthening souls, and that it can be done by fusing them, but there are several problems. Kyle asks her, "Did you fail?" Seldonia replies yes, and continues that they tried using infant souls and tested artificial souls, and they feared nothing, but she went off topic, and she explains to Kyle that there are 2 holy dragon hearts now, and she asks him what he thinks happened to Kyle's soul in this world. Kyle asks her in confusion, "What happened? Is it possible?" Seldonia replies, "That's right, it's there," and Kyle looks at his hands. Seldonia adds that the soul fusion happened to him without him realizing it, and it's supposed that his soul has increased in power and his magical power has also doubled. And she asks him, "Do you remember that?" Kyle remembers his training earlier. Seldonia explains to him that he can use powerful magic spells in the future. Kyle is surprised, but Seldonia reminds him that this is just her own theory, and his ability to master it is another matter. Kyle asks her if this will cause negative effects. Seldonia doesn't know because this is unprecedented, and she asks him if he notices anything unusual to tell her immediately, and Kyle thanks her. At night, Lizzie says she's used to camping outside, but the bed is amazing. Urza agrees. Lizzie asks her when she'll sleep. Urza explains she looks forward every month to the moment the full moonlight washes over her body. Lizzie has to sleep. Urza thinks this trip isn't bad, and Lizzie is a good kid. Seldonia has vast knowledge, and Theron is fun to watch. And there's Kale, who looks at her as if he knows what she's thinking, but that doesn't bother her. Suddenly, Lizzie screams in her sleep that she's the only one allowed near Kale. Urza understands she's talking in her sleep. She looks at the moon, but suddenly screams, realizing she forgot something. Then we see Kale on the ground in the forest. He explains his stamina has improved, but he still has a long way to go. Seldonia appears and tells him about the ghost training method, clarifying it didn't exist in her era. Kale looks at her and insists, this is nothing compared to real combat. He looks at his sword and feels it's part of him. Seldonia confirms this, adding that the sword embodies the magical Exarl's technique, and no human-made sword matches its power. Kale tells her he's used mithril swords before, but they don't compare to this one. Seldonia explains this sword isn't made of mithril. Kale is surprised. Suddenly, Urza arrives. Kale is startled and asks what brought her. Urza reminds him about the contract's due date. Kale had forgotten too. Urza tells him it was his suggestion. Kale realizes this but asks to do it later. Urza gets angry because the next date is in a month, and her true name is at stake. Kale has to agree since she's insistent. We see Urza say that usually, they exchange real names and promise to stay together for life, performed in a marriage ceremony. Her heart trembled when she first heard it. She never imagined doing this with someone she's known for only half a month. She calls Kale and tells him to stand here, but Kale is asleep. Urza calls him. Kale wakes up, apologizes, and stands before her. She explains she'll enact the contract. We see Urza performing magic. Kale thinks that from now on, it will be as before. Urza enacts the contract, ordering Kale not to reveal her true name to anyone or use it for evil. She tells him to swear on it. Kale swears. Suddenly, a strong light shoots into the sky. Kale gets closer, but Urza pushes him away. Kale apologizes. But suddenly, we see Urza explain that since she's in the magic circle, she's making a contract with the spirit of the fire salamander. Kale is surprised. Urza looks at him and says her first command is to burn the person in front of him. We hear Kale's scream and an explosion. In the morning, Kale, Urza, and Theron look tired. Lizzie asks what's wrong. Kale tells her a minor incident happened last night. Urza orders him to be quiet and not talk about it. Lizzie asks Kale about the smell of fire coming from him. Kale replies there was a misunderstanding last night. He looks at Urza and explains the contract was enacted. He asks her why she continues her journey with them. Urza replies she wants to know how and why he knows her true name, and she won't let Kale out of her sight. Theron tells them he's tired because Lizzie interrupts, saying he was flirting with women for sure. Theron gets angry. Lizzie tells them to ignore him. She asks them why they are heading to Arkan. Kale hesitantly replies that Seldonia had a premonition. Seldonia is surprised. Kale continues that according to his readings, Arkan should be their next destination. Seldonia agrees. Lizzie is surprised by her response. Kale assures her she's imagining things. They arrived in Arkan. Lizzie is surprised by the crowd. Theron explains Princess Melina is coming to offer condolences, and he always hoped to see her. Lizzie says they are lucky. This is also Urza's first time seeing the princess. After that, the princess appears before the crowd. Urza explains the princess is the future queen. They confirm she is indeed beautiful. We see children surrounding her. A child suddenly falls, and we see the princess go to comfort her. We see people in the crowd applauding, and commoners explain that the princess dedicated time for this visit. At this moment, Kale sees the princess's guard, and it's Xanthus, who looks in Kale's direction and then walks away. Seldonia asks Kale if he's sure this is the princess. Kale replies yes, and that she's 16 and destined to die in 2 days. Later, Kale sits with Seldonia and tells her that in 2 days, the princess will die on her way from Arkan to Sanis village, and Hydra will attack the caravan. He explains the forest near Arkan is full of monsters, and Sanis village was attacked by Hydra a month ago. The princess came after hearing about this attack. She will head to Sanis village, which is still dangerous, and die there. People will say it's a tragedy and bad luck, but Kale believes it's due to her recklessness. Seldonia asks him if there wasn't anything suspicious about her death, like a planned assassination disguised as a monster attack. Kale clarifies that these are different rumors about the princess's death. He adds that the biggest suspect was her half-brother, Prince Carinus, because he is second in line to the throne as the son of a mistress, and he would benefit most from her death. He explains what makes him suspicious is that the prince is currently in the city. Seldonia tells him no one talks about that. Kale tells her the prince is introverted and doesn't appear in public. He adds that all these were rumors about her death and were ultimately considered an unfortunate accident. Seldonia understands here that Kale wants to exploit this incident. Kale replies yes, because by saving the princess, he will turn into a hero. Kyle stands up and continues his speech that the secret lies in making his intervention to save the princess appear spontaneous, but he explains that he doesn't know the exact location of Hydra's attack, and he must watch her. At this moment, Theron enters and tells them that he asked around about the princess's plans but didn't get anything. Kyle asks him why he was asking about her plans. Theron answers so that he and the princess can have their destined meeting. Kyle asks in amazement what. Theron continues that he will intervene bravely to protect her from any danger she might face. Kyle is shocked, so Theron asks him what's wrong. Kyle tells him that the same idea occurred to him, and Theron is surprised and angry, but Kyle explains to him that the princess is really in danger, and this is according to Seldonia's future vision, and Seldonia agrees with him. Theron thinks this is his chance, and that he must catch up with the princess. Kyle advises him not to rush. After that, we see the princess's procession leaving the palace, and we see Kyle and his friends watching the procession. Lizzie asks if the princess is really in danger. Theron explains to her that this is a vision, but Seldonia interrupts him and tells them that this is her future vision. Orza asks them how will we follow the procession, and that they can't get too close. Seldonia explains that she will help them with her special abilities, and suddenly she transforms into a falcon. Everyone is amazed, but Seldonia explains to them that her true form is the gemstone in the sword that Kyle has, and that this body is nothing but a symbolic image made of magical energy that can be easily modified, and then she flies in the air and watches the princess's procession from afar, without anyone noticing her. And we see that what Seldonia sees can be seen by Kyle and his friends through the sword, and they see that the city guards are guarding the princess. And Kyle explains that the city guards are well trained but can't be relied upon. At this moment, Orza explains that this is amazing, and if used properly, it will become stronger than a good weapon. And Lizzie agrees with her. Theron screams because he feels jealous that Kyle can peek whenever he wants, and Lizzie and Orza are surprised by his words. And at this moment, they hear Seldonia telling them that something strange is happening. Kyle quickly asks her, is it the monsters? Seldonia explains that the princess's carriage drivers are attacking the guards. Theron explains that this is madness. Kyle runs and orders them to go there. We see that the carriage drivers have killed the guards, and we see one of them throwing magical dust, and Kyle and his friends approach. And Kyle recites a magic spell and pounces on the carriage drivers and kills them, then he ties them with ropes. Theron goes to check on the princess and tells them she's unconscious. Kyle explains that surely they have some companions who might come at any moment, and asks Theron to stay with the princess. And suddenly a dog appears and attacks Kyle, but Kyle kills it with his sword. And we see another group of hellhounds standing in front of them, and they start attacking them. And we see Orza and Lizzie killing them, and a dog approaches them and devours one of the carriage drivers. Lizzie explains that their number is large. Kyle asks Theron if he can drive the carriage. Theron actually goes, but tells Kyle that he can't because the carriage reins are cut. And suddenly they hear the footsteps of a huge monster approaching them. Kyle was expecting its arrival, and Seldonia tells Kyle that it's close. Kyle tells Theron that the princess's safety is their first priority, and asks Theron to stay with her, and asks Lizzie and Orza to go to Theron. Orza asks him, will you fight it alone? Kyle explains to her that he won't be reckless, and that he has a chance to kill it. Orza looks at him and asks him not to die, and Kyle runs toward the monster, and Orza and Lizzie struggle with the hellhounds, and Orza summons a salamander, which appears and sets fire to the hellhounds. On the other side, we see Kyle running looking for the monster, and we hear Seldonia asking him if he can kill Hydra. Kyle tells her that he determines the number of its heads based on its strength, and that he defeated a three-headed Hydra before, and suddenly Hydra appears in front of him. And Kyle is surprised because Hydra has many heads and not three, and the monster roars. Seldonia asks Kyle, shall we run? But Kyle explains to her that it's too late, and that he must fight it, and Hydra moves to attack Kyle. Kyle explains that Hydra's movements can be predicted, but its scales are resistant to sword attacks. But more dangerous than this is its poisonous breath, and we see it releasing its poisonous breath on Kyle, and the place fills with the smoke of its breath. But Kyle is fine thanks to the dragon skin armor that neutralizes the poison, and Kyle takes out a magic stone and throws it toward Hydra, which explodes and freezes Hydra, and we see Kyle throwing another stone, which explodes on Hydra, and Hydra releases its poisonous breath on Kyle, but Kyle dodges it again. With dragon leather armor, he attacks the Hydra and succeeds in cutting off one of its heads. We hear Seldonia telling him that he fights better than she expected. Kyle tells her that he came prepared, but the monster's regeneration ability is fast. On the other side, Theron, Lizzie, and Ozra are still fighting the hellhounds. Ozra explains that she's worried about Kyle, and wonders if Kyle is capable of fighting the Hydra alone. Lizzie tells her that she's also worried, but they must eliminate these dogs first, and we see Theron killing one of them. Then we see Kyle throwing a magic stone at the Hydra and freezing it, but quickly the Hydra breaks free from this freeze, and it becomes clear to Kyle that he has one last magic stone. The Hydra attacks him, but Kyle dodges and cuts off one of its heads, but the head regenerates. And Kyle explains that its regeneration ability is faster than a 3-headed Hydra. Kyle explains that he must target the source. And Kyle takes out the last magic stone he has, and uses it, and rushes quickly toward the Hydra. And we see Kyle plunging his sword into the Hydra's body, and the monster suffers. Then he enters and uses his magic rings to strike the monster and puts his hands inside it, but the monster pushes him away, and Kyle flies and hits a tree and falls to the ground in pain. But he gets up and sees the Hydra monster standing before him. But we see green light emanating from inside the Hydra's body, and suddenly it explodes and turns into pieces. Kyle is happy because he succeeded in destroying it. We hear Seldonia here explaining that Kyle placed explosive stones inside the wound. Kyle replies that throwing stones at the Hydra didn't cause damage. Seldonia tells him that this strike is powerful. Kyle explains that this strike depends on speed and strength, but it exposes him to danger, so he can't use it much in battle. On the other side, we see that the friends have eliminated the Hellhounds. Asura tells Lizzie that she's worried about Kyle, so they must go to him, but they're surprised when Kyle returns to them. Asura asks him if he was able to kill the Hydra by himself. Kyle replies yes, but he faced some troubles. But Asura tells him that his smell is terrible, and Lizzie, when she approaches him, sees that Asura is right, that Kyle's smell is terrible. And they tell him that his smell is the Hydra's smell, and they run away from him and tell him that he must get rid of that smell. And Kyle stands desperate with them. Then we see Kyle pouring water on himself, and we hear Seldonia asking him if he expected more praise, but Kyle asks her to be quiet. Then Kyle goes to Theron and asks him about the princess's condition. Theron tells him that the princess hasn't woken up yet, and it seems that she and her maid have been drugged. And Kyle climbs into the carriage, and sees Asura and Lizzie sitting next to the princess, and tells them that they should give her an antidote so she wakes up. Asura agrees with him, and explains that buying the antidote was a good thing and useful, and takes out the antidote and gives it to the princess. Theron at this moment tells Kyle that he found something on the ground. Kyle takes it from him and tells him that the drivers managed to lure the monsters to attack the princess, and explains that the princess's death previously wasn't an accident, but was an assassination. In the city, we see the commander standing with the prince, and the commander tells the prince they sent a squad. At sunset, Kyle enters the carriage and asks about the princess's condition. Asura shakes her head that there's nothing new, and at this moment the princess begins to wake up and asks them if she's alive. Asura tells her to take it easy, and the princess tells them that she didn't think she would wake up again, and asks them if you are the ones who saved me. Theron rushes quickly and tells her that he's the one who saved her, but Lizzie quickly punches him in the stomach and signals for Kyle to speak. Kyle bows before the princess and tells her that his name is Kyle, and that he and his friends saw that the princess and her guards were being attacked during their travels, so he and his friends saved her from the monsters. And at this moment, Arca, the princess's maid, wakes up and runs toward her, but the princess asks her to calm down because these are the ones who saved them. But Arca tells her that they shouldn't trust strangers, but the princess thanks them for saving her, and the princess stands. But Kyle tells her that the situation outside is ugly, but the princess insists on going out, and outside the princess goes to one of the drivers tied with ropes and looks at him, and the princess turns and asks them if they are on the road connecting Arkan and Sanis. Kyle answers her yes. Then the princess asks if all the guards died. Kyle tells her that they found them dead when they arrived. Lizzie explains that the princess seems different from before, and Asura agrees with her. At this moment, Seldonia tells Kyle that a night squad is coming from Arkan. Kyle tells the princess about this, and here the princess panics and tells them that they must flee immediately, and continues that they won't kill her alone but will kill them with her. Kyle asks her, won't your kingdom's guards defend you? The princess answers him no, and continues that the man who wants her dead is the commander of the 2nd Battalion, and he is Zentus. And Kyle is shocked and remembers when he saw him with the princess in the city. And Kyle asks the princess, do you mean that Zentus? The princess goes to Arca and orders her to burn all the corpses. We see Arca saying some magic spells, and suddenly a fireball appears above her and burns all the corpses around her. The princess tells them that this man Zentus wants her dead badly, and by burning the corpses it becomes difficult to identify her, and that they must provide as much time as possible, and orders Arca to take command, and tells Kyle and his friends that they must leave immediately. And Theron throws the dust bag away into the fire, and explains that if they wanted to provide as much time as possible, the monsters would help them delay them, and he rides the carriage, and they all leave the place. We see Princess Melina thanking Kyle and his friends. Kyle wonders if Commander Zenthos really planned this attack. The princess answers yes, along with her older brother Karinas, the mastermind behind it. Theron is surprised her brother planned this attack. Orza realizes it's a family conflict. Kyle asks the princess again if she's sure. She tells him yes, because she overheard them last night plotting. Earlier, we see the princess collapsing to the ground, dropping a glass from her hand. Before passing out, she hears Commander Zenthos and her brother Prince Karinas agreeing and planning the attack. Zenthos adds that they'll tell everyone she insisted on going to Sanis village despite the danger. Prince Carinus confirms that the beloved princess will have a tragic accident and die a horrible death. She faints at that moment. Now, the princess says she knows her brother always wanted things like this, but she thought he didn't have it in him. Her handmaid interrupts, saying she's revealing a lot. The princess reassures her, saying, "It's okay, Ninus." Theron suddenly stands up and explains that he just realized who that girl is. She's the one who used to carry flowers in Arkan. The girl gets flustered. The princess asks if he really noticed. She explains that she's the one who told her to change her appearance. Theron says she caught his eye because she looked like she'd become beautiful in the future. Orza is annoyed. Kyle asks the princess why she asked her to do that. The princess explains she wanted to win people's support. Theron whispers to Orza that the princess just admitted it. Orza says that human politics are complicated. The princess confirms she never suspected Zenthos. She adds that her brother isn't fit to rule, but Zenthos' support makes him strong, because Zenthos is a skilled leader and very popular. She explains that she was always cautious around her brother, and made sure to take Kelran and the 5th Legion with her when she went out. Kyle is surprised. He'd heard the 5th Legion was all women. The princess confirms this, and says they have great style, which is why they're called to capital celebrations. That's why Zenthos accompanied her this time. She adds that she should have been more wary of her brother accompanying her. Kyle thinks to himself that he can't believe Zenthos was involved in the assassination, but he believes the princess. He says that Zenthos is now an enemy. He tells the princess that since the assassination failed, for sure, they'll plan another attack. The princess is certain Zenthos has a backup plan if the attack fails. Kyle thinks Zenthos will blame him and his friends for attacking the princess. Lizzie is shocked and asks why he'd pin that on them. Kyle explains he'll call them ruthless killers of the princess's guards. Theron asks what to do now. Kyle says the princess told them everything so they couldn't run. He asks her if that's true. The princess clarifies that they're all involved now and have to try their best to survive. She promises a big reward if they make it back to the capital. Kyle agrees, but tells her they don't need money, they just want honor. The princess is surprised because that's not a normal request. The princess says it's in their best interest to save time until help arrives. The 5th Legion should reach Arkan by tomorrow morning, and they'll search for the princess when they realize she's not there. Kyle wonders if they'll run into the 2nd Legion on the way. The princess explains that with the 5th Legion, their strength will be balanced. Kyle realizes this puts the 2nd Legion in a tough spot. Theron suggests hiding in Sanis village. Kyle objects, saying that would be a bad idea. The village would be destroyed to cover it up. Lizzie worries that the 2nd Legion might do that. Orza explains to Lizzie that since they killed royal guards, and Kyle adds they wouldn't hesitate to kill 100 villagers. He suggests they should go back. There are tens of thousands in Arkan, and they can't kill them all. He adds that they'll meet the 5th Legion on the way. The princess interrupts that they'll also meet their pursuers. She asks Kyle if he has a plan. Kyle says they'll just break through directly. The princess is surprised. We see the 2nd Legion. Seldonia is watching them and tells Kyle that Zenthos isn't with them. The princess tells Kyle that the smart sword is a useful tool. Kyle says Seldonia's scouting abilities are critical. He adds that since Zenthos isn't there, they can plan accordingly. He thinks their chances are good. The princess sees them preparing a lot of magic stones. Lizzie gives the princess some potions, advising her to take one if she gets hurt. The princess comments that these are high-level doses. She looks at Kyle and his friends and asks who they are. Kyle tells her they're just a group of ambitious heroes who happen to be nearby. At the same time, we see Prince Carinus is furious about what happened, with Zenthos in front of him telling him there's no need to worry. Zenthos says his men are now hunting the princess, but the prince asks him why he's here. He should go and finish her off himself. Zenthos explains that if the princess isn't in Arkan when the 5th Legion arrives, their commander Kelran will interrogate him, and the prince needs to handle it himself. The prince says he won't tolerate any more failures and orders Zenthos to eliminate Princess Melina at any cost. Zenthos swears he won't let the prince down. We see the 2nd Legion on the move. The commander orders them to stop. A soldier tells him the princess's carriage will pass soon. The commander orders them to get ready and to go for the legs to immobilize them. At that moment, the princess's carriage approaches. Before the commander can order his men to launch arrows, he sees magic stones dropping in front of them. Suddenly, the stones explode. We see Seldonia was the one who threw the stones. The commander orders his troops to hold their lines. Suddenly, Kyle appears, driving the carriage through their midst. Orza casts a magic spell on them. The explosions increase. Theron is excited and wishes death on the Legion soldiers. Lizzie and the princess are inside the carriage. The princess thinks it's amazing. Kyle rides right through the Legion. The commander says they'll continue the chase with any soldiers still able to move. Theron takes one of the potions and tells Kyle you can get a lot done when money isn't a problem. Kyle says the plan was rough, but he's glad it worked. He tells the princess they're safe for now. Suddenly they sense something wrong with the carriage. carriage. They discover one of the wheels has been damaged. Orza suggests they have to abandon the carriage. Lizzie tells the princess and the two ladies to follow her. Kyle asks Orza if she can use Windwalker. Orza says yes, but she's not sure they lost the soldiers. Kyle asks Seldonia to check, and she confirms 30 soldiers are chasing them. Kyle says that's not a lot, but there will be a squad waiting at the city gate. He suggests that someone has to stay behind to delay them. Orza is shocked, saying they're 30 royal guards, but Kyle says the priority is protecting the princess. Orza is angry. Kyle tells her that Theron can delay them by himself. Theron wasn't even listening. Kyle tells him he'll stay behind to delay the royal guards. Theron is surprised. At that moment, Lizzie tells Kyle that they're ready to go. Kyle asks Orza to use Windwalker. Orza casts the magic Windwalker spell. Theron calls out to Kyle, asking him to wait, and how he can delay the guards by himself. Kyle tells him it'll be hard and wishes him luck. Lizzie also wishes him luck. Theron calls after them, asking them to wait, but they leave him and go. Theron is stunned. We see the guards approaching. Theron raises the white flag to them and says he doesn't want to fight. Suddenly, the guards surround him. Theron begs for mercy. He tells them it's all Kyle's fault for leaving him there and running away. He offers them money and says he found it in the Sandguard Mountains maze and could show it to them. At that moment, two guards tell the commander the princess isn't in the carriage. The commander realizes they used the horses to escape. He orders his men to go after them. Theron asks the commander what about him. The commander orders his men to get rid of him. Theron begs them not to kill him, says he'll do anything, just don't kill him. The commander raises his sword and tells Theron he's in the way. Meanwhile, Orza asks Kyle if he's sure about leaving Theron behind, worried they might kill him. Kyle says he didn't want anyone to die. Orza asks if he's serious. Lizzie cuts in, saying she forgot to tell Orza something. Orza asks what it is. Lizzie tells Orza that Theron is way stronger than both her and Kyle. We see Theron take out the commander with his sword. Theron says killing the commander first was the right move. We see Theron standing among the guards, facing the commander's corpse. Theron takes off his rings and throws them at the guards, who are shocked and afraid of him. Theron says he feels lighter now. He launches at the guards, swiftly cutting off their heads. The guards attack him. Theron throws a magic stone at them, which explodes. The horses run off into the distance. Theron is pleased with that. Meanwhile, Kyle tells Azra that Theron disappears a lot because he spends a lot of time training alone with his sword. He adds that maybe Theron's magic abilities are almost non-existent, but he's much better than him with a sword. Then Lizzie adds that Theron never misses his training. Kyle continues, saying that Theron always fights ferociously, and he never wants to face him in battle. At this point, Azra asks about Theron's ridiculous behavior. Kyle asks her if that made her underestimate him. He adds that anyone who fights him without realizing it will. Azra interrupts and says Theron will tear them apart. She understands that Theron is skilled at deceiving his enemies. Kyle tells her that deception is only half of it, and he adds that Theron wouldn't be able to stop himself if he faced 30 royal guards at once. He wishes their deaths weren't necessary. At that moment, we see Theron wiping out the guards, and he sees he's got 8 guards left. Suddenly, Theron tosses his sword away. The guards are surprised. Theron tells them his mission was to delay them, not to kill them all. And, since their horses have run off, he succeeded at holding them up, and now there's no way they can catch the princess. He tells them this is the right time to run away. If they don't hurry, maybe a few of them might survive. The guards really do retreat. Then Theron takes a serum. We see he's got 3 magic stones in his hand. He throws them at the guards, and the stones explode among them. Theron takes his sword and finishes off the last of the guards. He sits down on the ground and explains that he never meant to let any of them escape, and he wishes his friends success. Meanwhile, on the other side, Zenthus says someone interfered. After that, we see Zenthus on his horse, and he orders the guards to protect the prince. Zenthus leaves. Sildonia tells Kyle what she saw, that a single knight is coming their way. Suddenly, Zenthus casts a magical spell and fires it at Sildonia, hitting her. Kyle calls out to Sildonia to check if she's okay. She tells him she was attacked, but she's fine, and the knight was very precise in hitting her. Kyle realizes that this knight is Zenthus. Kyle tells the princess to hide, and he tells his friends that if things get weird, they should go to Theron. The princess asks Kyle if Zenthus is coming. Kyle answers yes. The princess says that Zenthus is a powerful knight, and asks if Kyle can beat him alone. Kyle tells her he's always avoided fighting him, but now he doesn't have a choice. The princess comes closer and asks him if he really saved her by chance, since he talks like he knows her. Kyle gets flustered and stays quiet. The princess says this isn't the right time for that, but she tells him her fate is in his hands, and wishes him luck. Kyle promises her he'll win. Then Zenthus arrives and sees Kyle in front of him. Zenthus realizes Kyle is the one who saved the princess. Kyle tells him that's true and asks why he came alone. Zenthus explains he doesn't want to lose anyone else who's not involved in this, because he can end all of this by simply killing Kyle. Kyle understands what Zenthis means, and asks him to surrender because he doesn't want to kill him. Zenthis is surprised by Kyle's request, and Kyle adds that he'll ask the princess to forgive him. Zenthis gets angry and tells him to stop with the nonsense. Kyle interrupts and asks why he helped in an attempt to assassinate the princess. He's sure Zenthis didn't do it for money or rank. Zenthis answers that he doesn't owe him any explanation, especially since Kyle will be dead soon. Zenthis draws his sword and tells Kyle he's going to defeat him quickly so he can chase after the princess. Kyle thinks to himself that he has no choice but to fight. They cast magical spells and attack each other. Zenthis tries to strike Kyle, but Kyle dodges Zenthis's blows. Kyle injures Zenthis and explains that he tricked him using illusion magic because unless someone avoids it the first time they see it. Kyle says he knows how Zenthis fights, and we find out Zenthis is the one who taught Kyle how to fight with a sword.